Welcome to the Cozy Historian. If you find yourself drifting off before the story ends, that's perfectly fine. Just remember to like and subscribe before you fall asleep. It helps these quiet journeys through time softly continue. And before your eyes grow heavy, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are? And what's the last thing you did before bed? Tonight, we're traveling back to the very beginning of rest itself. So fluff your pillow, pull up your blanket, and let's drift back to the world's very first bed. But tonight, our rest takes us somewhere far more recent and delicately perfumed into the gas-lit glow of the Victorian parlor, that sanctum of civility where gossip met etiquette, and where society itself was quietly written in whispers and glances. In the 19th century, the parlor was not merely a room. It was a mirror of the soul, a reflection of reputation and respectability. To step into someone's parlor was to be granted a glimpse into their standing, their aspirations, their place within the intricate web of propriety. It was here, among the carved furniture and faint scent of rosewater, that the true theatre of the Victorian home unfolded. The parlor served as the first impression. It was where guests were received, where introductions were made, and where reputations were carefully curated. Even the furnishings spoke in subtle tones. The choice of drapery, the sheen of the piano, the quality of the carpet, all suggested a family's taste and education. A poorly arranged room, or one too richly adorned, could whisper of vulgarity, too sparse, and one risked seeming impoverished or indifferent. And so the household, especially the mistress, became a curator of impression. She balanced refinement with warmth, gentility with display. Flowers were placed not merely for beauty, but to signal freshness and vitality. Books upon the side table hinted at intellect, though the titles were often chosen as much for appearance as for affection. A copy of Tennyson, a volume of sermons, perhaps a few sentimental novels, all arranged as carefully as jewelry upon a neck. But even the loveliest setting would have been lifeless without its true purpose, conversation. The parlor existed for talk, and talk was both art and weapon. Victorian etiquette manuals, of which there were hundreds, instructed readers on every conceivable detail. They advised when to call, how long to stay, where to sit, what to say, and most importantly, what not to say. A well-bred lady might pay a call of 15 minutes, no more, leaving her calling card upon a silver tray in the hall. To linger longer was forward. To arrive uninvited was a breach of conduct. And yet, within these narrow boundaries, entire social lives unfolded. When visitors arrived, servants announced them with due ceremony. The hostess would rise gracefully, never hastily, and greet her guests with a smile that balanced warmth and restraint. The exchange of pleasantries followed a rhythm centuries in the making, a ballet of civility. "How kind of you to call," she might say, offering a seat upon the sofa, her own position carefully chosen to command both comfort and authority. Conversation began not with substance, but with surface, weather, music, books, mutual acquaintances. These were the threads from which intimacy was slowly spun. To skip too quickly to serious topics was to risk impropriety. Politics, religion, and money were avoided. Scandal was hinted at, but never named. Gossip was a secret language, spoken softly, wrapped in smiles. And how the Victorians loved their gossip. It was the heartbeat of polite society, the murmur beneath the rustle of skirts. To exchange news, who had danced with whom, whose fortune was rising, whose marriage was trembling, was not merely entertainment. It was information, currency, power. Yet even gossip had its manners. To speak too freely was to endanger one's own reputation. The most skilled conversationalists could suggest an entire story with a single raised brow, or a pause just long enough to invite the imagination to wander. As daylight waned and the lamps were lit, the parlor changed character. The room that by day had been a stage for civility became, by evening, a cocoon for intimacy. Music filled the air. A young lady might take her place at the piano, hands gliding gently over ivory keys. Her playing was both accomplishment and performance, a proof of cultivation. The choice of song mattered. A sentimental air suggested sweetness. A lively tune could hint at immodesty. Applause was light, never exuberant. Every sound, every sigh was measured. And now, as the lamplight deepens, let us linger upon the subtler side of etiquette, not written in books, but lived in glances. Consider the teacup, delicate and thin, balanced upon its saucer. To stir one's tea too briskly was to seem impatient, to slurp unforgivable. Sugar tongs were used with precision, never fingers. A spoon rested silently upon its saucer, never within the cup. And when conversation turned to matters of feeling, it did so in metaphor. A lady did not say she was lonely. She said softly that the season has been very quiet. For many women, the parlor was both domain and cage. Here, under the guise of leisure, they ruled, arranging gatherings, orchestrating visits, mediating disputes. But their influence, though vast, was delicate. Power came through persuasion, not proclamation. The art of hosting became a subtle form of diplomacy. To invite one person and not another was a statement. To position guests just so around the fire was strategy. Through such gestures, households rose or fell in social esteem. And what of the men? They entered the parlor as actors enter a well-rehearsed scene. A gentleman's manners were his armor. He bowed, he complimented, he deferred. His conversation was to be gallant, never flirtatious, clever, never cutting. Yet men, too, were vulnerable to the undercurrents of rumor that swirled through every tea table. The faintest hint of impropriety, a debt unpaid, a glance too long, could ripple outward until it reached every drawing-room in town. As the century wore on, the parlor began to change. The rigid codes of early Victoria softened with the passing decades. Gaslight yielded to electricity, corsets loosened, and conversation grew bolder. Yet even in the twilight of the age, the parlor remained the sanctuary of gentility. It was where love was declared, where grief was received, where families gathered for evenings of reading and reflection. It was, in essence, the emotional heart of the home. Imagine the sounds, the ticking of the clock upon the mantelpiece, the faint crackle of the hearth, the rustle of silk as someone shifts in her chair. Outside, carriage wheels pass over cobblestones, muffled by fog. Inside, the room glows with that peculiar softness of lamplight on velvet. The conversation drifts, sometimes bright, sometimes melancholy, yet always contained within the invisible borders of decorum. And now, as the evening deepens further, consider what the parlor meant beyond its walls. It was a symbol of aspiration, the embodiment of middle-class virtue. To possess a proper parlor was to belong to a world that valued refinement, education, and order. The Industrial Revolution had filled cities with new wealth, but also new anxiety. The parlor offered reassurance, a haven of beauty against the roar of progress. Within its confines, one could pretend that life was still measured and graceful. that time moved to the pace of polite conversation rather than factory bells. Even the clutter of ornaments, the porcelain dogs, the framed samplers, the fern stands, spoke of a desire to tame the world, to make it smaller and more comforting. The Victorians surrounded themselves with symbols of memory and meaning because the world beyond their door was changing faster than ever before. And so the parlor became a museum of self. Every cushion, every photograph, every faded letter tucked into a drawer told a story. To sit within its walls was to be wrapped in identity, the past arranged neatly around the present. But as the 20th century approached, new inventions began to hum outside those lace curtains: the telephone, the motor car, the gramophone. The world grew louder, quicker, more public. The parlor, with its gentle rituals and whispered confidences, began to fade. By the time of the First World War, many homes no longer had one at all. The drawing room became a living room. The living room became a place, not of performance, but of rest. The art of formal visiting, of leaving one's card and calling at 3:30, slipped quietly into history. Yet traces remain. Every time we arrange a room for comfort, every time we offer tea to a guest, every time conversation dances carefully around a delicate subject, we echo those long-ago evenings under the gaslight. The spirit of the Victorian parlor endures in our longing for connection, wrapped in civility, in the way we still gossip kindly, still decorate our homes to reflect our inner selves, still find solace in shared warmth at day's end. And perhaps, dear listener, that is why the parlor feels so hauntingly familiar. Though the furniture has changed, though the world outside rushes ever faster, we still crave the same gentle order, a place where words matter, where glances speak volumes, and where kindness is measured not by grand gestures, but by grace. So as you drift now toward sleep, imagine yourself in that quiet room. The lamps burn low, the fire whispers against the grate, and conversation fades to a murmur. A cup rests upon its saucer. The scent of tea and wood polish lingers in the air. Beyond the window, the night has settled softly upon the cobblestones. Let the hush of that parlor cradle you. The voices of the past are gentle now, softened by distance, warmed by memory. The rules and rituals that once bound them have loosened. Only their beauty remains. And in that stillness, between the tick of the clock and the sigh of the fire, you may hear the faintest echo of their laughter. Polite, reserved, but human all the same. And so, dear listener, as the candles fade and the night deepens, may your dreams be filled with the soft echoes of history. Goodbye from the cozy historian.